what's next?
Election. Well, you did the election recap. So now we're gonna reflection on the election. I didn't mean to rhyme, but anyways, reflection on the election. Real quickly, Zeno, give me your don't give me your thoughts on the future of the parties, right? Because I think that's one of the big things that me and you. I don't think we're going to differ completely, but we are going to have differing opinions on it. But just real quickly, give me a reflection on the election, on what you think. What do you think it does to this country? What do you think what's your overall feelings of what happened?
Yeah, so I want to touch on what I thought the election told us about our electorate, right? So, first of all, I think a lot of us, and this is the problem with, with having your own echo chambers, right? Because I watch MSNBC a lot, I watch CNN quite a bit, the Young Turks every now and then. I know you say you're on far left Twitter and all that stuff, right? So we are all hearing things that kind of reinforce things we already believe. Same thing. Conservatives are out there watching Fox News, One American News, all that stuff. They're seeing things that reaffirm. Breitbart, yeah. They're seeing things that reaffirm what they already believe. And coming into election day, no lie, I was of the belief that the Democrats were gonna beat Graham. I thought McConnell would have a harder time of it. And I thought the Democrats would easily take the Senate and probably extend their House seats. And most importantly, I thought Trump was going to lose by enough of a margin that this election would have been a repudiation of Trump and Trumpism. What ended up happening, what the election told me about the electorate instead is that this country is a lot more divided than I thought. There are a lot more people who have either bought into the Trump narrative that America first, or screw everyone else, or they've bought into the Republican narrative that the Democrats are going to lead us to doom and gloom, right? And that's the analysis I want to touch on. That second part, I think. That second part was most apparent in South Florida, right? So when Florida started coming in, right, Trump was winning because a lot of what was coming in was LA, right, Lower Alabama, your Panhandle areas, and Trump was winning. That was expected, right? But Trump wasn't winning by as much as he won in 2016. Biden was actually closing the gap on those. So we're like, oh, if Biden's closing the gap on those, Biden could win Florida. In the last 3 or so elections, the Democrats have won South Florida. So we're talking Miami-Dade and what's the other one? Broward County. They've won
Tampa.
No, I'm speaking more specifically.
Oh, I'm sorry, South Florida. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they've won those areas by 30 points or more. Biden won it by 10 points. He won Miami-Dade by 10 points. And what that told me, or at least what I believed at the time when I commented on your thing that I have some thoughts about this, was that the Republican narrative of the Democrats are driving us towards socialism worked. Because a lot of the people that make up that area are people from South America or Cubans. And when they hear socialism, they're thinking of where they left to come to America, right? And you showed me one of the mailers you got earlier in the election season where it's like Biden and AOC and Bernie, and they're talking the Republican messaging has been that if Biden gets in, he's going to be taken over by the socialist wing of the party, even though they call themselves Democratic Socialists. All the Republicans have taken out of there is socialist.
Socialist Party.
Right. And I think that's what really killed Democrats in South Florida. And I am obviously now I'm extrapolating and saying if it was that detrimental in South Florida, it explains why Democrats also lost ground in other states as well. that socialism tag. So my analysis of that is that the Democrats need to find a way to distance themselves from that word, socialism. You can have the policies all you want, but don't use that word. And someone else, some pundit said, same thing goes for defund the police. I agree. I think the phrase defund the police was wrong. I wasn't thinking about defund the police on election night, but it kind of makes sense, right? But the socialism thing, that's the one that came to my mind on election night because of how poorly the Democrats did with the Hispanic votes. Not just Biden, but Democrats in general. So
well, it's funny enough because I feel like you're agreeing with my so I did a Facebook post, right? And I'm not gonna dive too much into the part that I bet. So this is what I said. I said that this election to me is it's embarrassing that Joe Biden didn't win in a landslide because you have one of the most polarizing presidents of all time, right? Even more like George Bush was polarizing because he had horrible like policies, right? Or he put us into a war, and that's what made him polarizing. But Donald Trump is polarizing for not only what he does, but what he says. He's just polarized. That's what he thrives on, right? So I was like, the way there wasn't enough done to make sure to show them, look, not only am I not this guy, because that's what I felt like a lot of the agenda was just show, hey, you're not Trump, right? But that wasn't enough. You have, because look, people voted for Trump even when he was saying this stuff. Mm-hmm. You have to show, hey, to the people that don't like Trump for being Trump, hey, this is what you need to, this is why you need to vote for me, right? Because I'm not him. But then the people who voted for Trump but are kind of like have kind of been burnt out by him, right? Just saying he's way too much, showing not only am I not him, but look, I'm going to show you why I'm better than him, right? I just don't feel like the strategy was there, the campaign was done properly. I will say we could throw a little bit of a I guess an excuse out there saying, hey, COVID did affect a lot, right? Mm-hmm. COVID did do a lot of things, so that could be a fair argument, right? But like you said, the whole I get the socialism tag. Obviously, I'm not scared by socialism. I'm assuming you're not scared by socialism because you understand that almost every developed country has, quote, socialism, right? Because people automatically equate socialism with communism, which they're actually really two different.
Not the same, yeah.
They're not the same. They're two different ideologies or whatever. So I get that, right? Because democratic socialism is much different than socialism, right? So, because democratic socialism is, honestly, if you want to be truthful, it's socialism using capitalism to further the masses, right? Mm-hmm. They're using capitalism to let you be rich and let you be well off, but they're also using it to make sure to not leave everybody behind. At the same time.
And what they say a lot of is that it's more Denmark than Venezuela. I think Bernie said that before, or AOC, one of them. Yeah.
But the thing with Bernie or AOC, when they say that, they explain why. Mm-hmm. The thing is, though, that's the problem is, right? You have to like, in order to show that, hey, when we say socialism, we don't mean this, you have to explain it. But all Trump has to say is, hey, that's socialism. And he doesn't have to say anything further, right? So it's kind of like you have to do a little bit extra work to outweigh that. But like I said, so in my status, I pointed out, like, look, Florida voted for Donald Trump, but they also voted to pass $15 minimum wage, which a lot of people like to credit that to kind of socialism or, anti-capitalism. Is like, if you raise the minimum wage, capitalists are not going to want to capitalize,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, let's be honest. Republicans that are making laws, to them, socialism is letting poor people do better in life. That's all it is to them. Yeah. And the thing is, poor people vote for them somehow. But,
and then I also want to point. Let's go with Georgia, right? Because me and Zino are in Georgia. Georgia is right now, it's 49.5 supposedly for Biden. Because where did they get all those mail-in ballots? I still don't know. But so they got it's 49.5 for Biden. and 49.2 for Donald Trump, right? So it's even. It really is. There's a lot of people still voting for Biden. There's still a lot of people voting for Trump. But look at the ballot measures, right? I don't know if you remember what the ballot measures were, but it was basically Georgia Constitutional Amendment 1, allow tax revenue dedication. Georgia Constitutional Amendment 2, waive sovereign immunity. Georgia referendum, extend charity tax exempt. I can kind of go a little bit into details of what they are, right? But there really are kind of not. I would say they're a little bit more progressive type of laws if you really look at them in the nitty gritty.
But well, hold on. I want to say that you mentioned Florida passing the $15 minimum wage. I think that one is very easy for people to look at and say, this is what it's saying. I think the ballot measures that were in Georgia, I think those were actually really not that easy to
They always are.
understand.
They always are. But the reason I would say that I feel like people in Georgia do the research for the most part is because, remember, Amendment 1 got denied the last election, which was basically, it was honestly what they were going to allow is it was going to allow public funding to fund private schools. That's really what it was. It was basically take out public funding to fund charter schools, right? To basically make richer people have to pay less for the schools that they can pay for. That's really what amendment technically was, right? And so these referendums, though, if you did your research, you would find out that they were the same. Because let me just make sure that so the allow tax revenue dedication, and I'll make sure to correct this if I'm wrong. But so this is how it reads: authorize the Georgia State Legislature to pass legislation establishing special funds with dedicated revenue sources to fund statute-specific projects. That's obviously is confusing if you just read it right away, right? But basically, what that referendum means is, if you're going to say that we're going to do this tax for this reason, you can only use that money for that reason.
Yeah.
Basically, you can't say, "Hey, we're going to charge more taxes to fund schools," but then you take money out of that, out of what's raised out of that, to go fund, public park, right, or a charter school, right? So that is,
you have to state what you're funding.
Exactly. So that in itself is, I don't know if you could say that's progressive, but that is an honorable referendum, right? It's an honorable kind of law that you're creating. That one was voted 81.6% versus 18.4%.
Yeah.
So people are paying attention, and they do want things to make their states better, their country better. And I feel like the problem is, going back to what you said, they're not finding the Democrats are not finding the right ways to explain, hey, look, this is to better the country. This isn't just to make I'm not trying to take your money away. Because what's the joke? It's like people were saying when Joe Biden said $400K that you'll get taxed a little bit more. They're like, yeah, guys from high school making $35K screaming and scared, or what was the one that I saw this really funny meme where they had a guy, you could tell he was like a teenager playing video games.
Yeah.
Did you see that one? He was like, "Hey man, I'm really concerned about Joe Biden's tax plan."
I haven't seen that one, but my favorite one is the Game of Thrones one, where the mountain was about to kill this guy, and the mountain is I think it's like a democratic socialist or something like that. It's about to kill this guy on the floor, and it's like the guy on the floor is like, guy making over 400,000, and then it's like it's the Hound. He comes and blocks him as like, guy making 35,000. So that's one of the ones I've seen.
So I feel like what ends up happening is, honestly, like going back what you said about the defund the police, I agree with you. It's not, you know what, guys, you guys can go back if you haven't seen Zeno's interview with his friend
Dane.
Yeah, he's a police officer. He talks about defund the police, right? He does explain that, hey, like, defund police isn't as heavily funded as you think it would be, right? But he does speak on that too. And basically, it's the whole idea is it's not defunding the police. It's basically, let's allocate the proper funds to the proper departments to make the police department be less strained, right?
Yeah, and be able to handle things like mental health and all that stuff.
Yeah, but that message just doesn't get thrown out, and I think that's the big problem with the Democratic Party. The messaging is horrible.
I think in general, though, and this has been the case for at least 20 years. And in fact, I don't think anybody was as good on the Democratic Party. In the Democratic Party, I don't think anyone was as good at messaging as Bill Clinton. Like, I've seen old clips of this guy explaining things, and like he breaks it really down, like real country folk down, right? No one has been as good as Bill Clinton at messaging. For the
I'd
last
say Obama was close,
he was, yeah, but
he was
the
better,
problem,
a better speaker. That's the thing that helped him.
yes, he was a better speaker, but the problem with Obama is he had the pre-existing condition of being black. So there were people who had already decided that, yeah. So there were people who'd already decided that they didn't want to listen to this guy, or like nothing he could say would sway
Oh,
them.
okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the Republicans have been fantastic at messaging over like the last 20 years. Like they're so good at making people afraid of what the Democrats would do if they're in power. Even though every time the Democrats are in power, all they've ever done is fix the budget. So so I don't know. They're really good at that. My question to you, right? So Trump got, as it stands now, Trump has 72 million votes. Biden has 77 million. Do you think that there are some of those 72 million that could have actually been moved to Biden if he did things differently?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with this, but let's just say, for example, the VP pick. You remember when the VP pick happened? Both of you were like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was our decision. Don't get me wrong. Now, please keep in mind, there's nothing. I completely get the impact
History. Yeah. Yeah.
of history, right? Her being the first woman, the first African American vice president, the first
Indian American.
yeah. So I get that, right? But some people do argue that she might have lost some people for Trump or for Biden because of her record, right? Hold on, I'm just saying some people might argue that. Right? So I mean, maybe he could have picked a better VP, still going with the woman, but
Yeah.
I think maybe Elizabeth Warren would have been better, even if leftists like myself aren't really huge fans of her. But we might be swayed because of the policies that she says she stands for, right? So I feel like there's certain things. VP would be one of them. Not saying that that's the reason why he didn't get some of those 72. I'm just saying certain things like that, maybe expressing, not saying things like, nothing's going to fundamentally change. Like the thing is though, people do want change. You came from the change administration though.
So I have to disagree on that because if anything, I think, yes, could Biden have gotten more votes with a different VP pick or being more vocal about what he wants? Possibly. I don't think any of those votes who were like, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for Biden because, we don't know what he stands for, or he didn't pick the right VP. I don't think any of those would have gone to Trump. If anything, they would have just voted third party or not voted at all. I think the 72 million who voted with Trump were going to vote with Trump. I don't think there's any change there because right up until election day, Trump had been just doing terrible things after terrible things, and he still got 72 million votes. So I don't think those guys were moving. And the other thing I was going to say is, as the election rolled around and we started seeing how North Carolina is a perfect example. Biden is actually pretty close to Trump in North Carolina, to the point where they still haven't called North Carolina. It looks like Trump's going to win it, but they haven't called it. By comparison, in the Senate race, Tom Tillis was leading Cunningham by a much wider margin, right? Same thing with Georgia. Biden winning Georgia, but Ossoff losing to Purdue. But there's going to be a runoff because they're both under 50%. But, Ossoff trailing Purdue. The reason why down ballot candidates are doing worse than Biden is because I think two things. I think the messaging around socialism and all that stuff has worked on the down ballot candidates because people are like, well, I don't really know John Ossoff, so I don't know if he really is going to be a socialist. But I do know Biden from 47 years or 36 years in the Senate and then 47 years of being in the public life. And he's a lot of things, but he's no socialist. So I'm going to vote for Biden. I think the blandness, as you will, or the status quo-ness of Biden actually helped him. because it's either status quo or this crazy president. Yeah, and I think that helped Biden. I think it would have been different if it was, crazy presidents versus, another nominee that is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. Not necessarily crazy, but his policies are completely opposite from this guy. I think then you'd have really seen the polarization, and I'm not sure that they would have had a 5 million vote victory. But because it was, you know what, let's get back to boring old America and get away from this. I think that actually did help Biden. Being square helped Biden. That's, my analysis of that.
Fair enough.
Especially in
I
southern
don't
states.
100% buy it, but I guess the reason I wouldn't buy it is because also we got to think about the United States. The United States isn't monolithic.
Mm.
It's not. It's state by state is different. So anyways, that's our reaction on the election, right?